On a crisp autumn evening in October of 1997, the small town of Clearwater, Indiana, was preparing to settle into another quiet night. It was the kind of town where everyone claimed to know everyone else, where children could ride their bikes across Main Street without a second thought, and where neighbors left their doors unlocked. But that night, a sense of safety would vanish forever. 14-year-old Jacob Miller, a shy but determined 8th grader, had just finished basketball practice. He was known for his scrappy defense, his shy smile, and his love of sketching in his worn-out notebooks. His coach recalled him leaving practice in good spirits, tossing his gym bag over his shoulder as he mounted his bike for the short ride home. Jacob never made it back. A passerby discovered his bike leaning against a chain-link fence near an abandoned grain silo just outside town. The tires were still warm, indicating it had only recently been ridden. But Jacob was gone. No footprints, no signs of a struggle, no note, just an empty bike and silence. At first glance, it looked like a random act of violence, the kind of nightmare scenario parents dread but never believe will touch their family. Flyers were printed within hours, neighbors searched through woods and creeks, and the local sheriff's office went door to door. The small town rallied behind Jacob's family, but with each passing day, hope dimmed. Detective Ellen Ward, a seasoned investigator with a reputation for persistence, was called in to assist. She had seen missing child cases before and knew the grim statistics. Her first instinct mirrored that of the sheriff's office. This was likely an abduction by an outsider, perhaps a drifter passing through, or a predator who had slipped under the radar. A struggle. And unlike typical abductions, there was no ransom demand, no attempt at contact, nothing to suggest this was a crime motivated by money. Ward interviewed Jacob's classmates, teachers, and neighbors. At first, their answers painted a portrait of an ordinary boy in an ordinary town. But then, quietly, some of Jacob's friends began to mention something strange. They told her that Jacob had been pressured by older kids to attend meetings outside town. They weren't sports gatherings or church youth groups. These meetings had a darker, secretive feel to them. Jacob, his friends said, had refused to go. Intrigued, Ward began digging into the history of Clearwater. What she found unsettled her. For decades, the town had been plagued by odd incidents. Pets disappearing, unexplained barn fires, teenagers vanishing only to be written off as runaways. Each report had been brushed aside or buried in the archives. And there was a pattern. Every incident seemed to connect, however loosely, to a secretive religious group on the outskirts of Clearwater. Officially, the group presented itself as a spiritual fellowship, nothing more than a congregation living by old traditions. But rumors suggested something else. Strict rules, initiation rituals, and harsh punishment for those who defied them. The investigation reached a turning point when Jacob's mother discovered a hidden notebook in his bedroom ceiling. Inside, Jacob had scribbled sketches, names, and cryptic phrases. On the last page, a single chilling line stood out. "They keep asking. I told them no. If something happens, it's because of them." This note transformed the case. It was no longer about a stranger in the night. Jacob's disappearance was deliberate and tied directly to the cult's influence in Clearwater. Detective Ward pressed harder, interviewing past members who had managed to leave the group. What she uncovered was darker than she had imagined. The cult wasn't a fringe gathering. It was deeply embedded into Clearwater's institutions. Some members held positions of authority in schools, local businesses, and even the sheriff's office. Their influence allowed them to cover up incidents and dissuade deeper investigations. The most shocking revelation came when Ward identified one of the group's leaders. Jacob's uncle, Richard Miller, a respected church deacon and a pillar of the community. Richard had been among those urging Jacob to attend the meetings, framing it as a rite of passage. When Jacob refused, Richard's reputation and the cult's secrecy were threatened. Ward pieced together Jacob's final night. Evidence suggested that Jacob had been lured to the abandoned grain silo under the guise of reconciliation. His uncle and other cult members promised they only wanted to talk. But once inside, Jacob vanished. No body was recovered, but traces of blood matching Jacob's DNA were later found in the silo's foundation, alongside ritual markings. The crime wasn't random. It was an act of punishment and control carried out by those Jacob should have been able to trust most. The investigation culminated in a raid on the cult's compound. Inside, authorities discovered hidden rooms used for ceremonies, detailed membership records, and journals describing rituals that stretched back generations. Several members, including Richard Miller, were arrested and charged with conspiracy, kidnapping, and murder. For Jacob's parents, the arrests brought no relief. Their son was still gone, and the betrayal cut deeper knowing that family and neighbors had played a role. They had trusted their community, only to find out that the very people who smiled at them in church pews had been part of their greatest nightmare. Detective Ward later admitted that the case haunted her more than any other, not simply because a boy was lost, but because of the silence that surrounded the truth. Dozens of townspeople had seen small signs, heard rumors, or even suspected the cult's involvement, yet chose to look away. Fear, loyalty, and denial had allowed darkness to thrive in plain sight. The disappearance of Jacob Miller became more than a tragedy. It became a mirror for Clearwater. It forced the town to confront its complicity, its willful ignorance, and its vulnerability to power masquerading as faith. To this day, Jacob's story lingers in whispers across Indiana. His name stands as a cautionary reminder. Sometimes the greatest dangers do not come from strangers passing through the night, but from those closest to us: family, neighbors, and trusted leaders. The echoes of his refusal to conform still haunt Clearwater, proof that a single act of courage, even by a boy, can expose the darkest secrets of a community.